This is TWiT.
Andy, you were with me on MacBreak Weekly when Alex Lindsay launched into a spirited defense of Apple's right to take 30% of anything on its platform. They built the platform. They put a lot of R&D into it. And gosh darn it, if you want to be on it, it's fair for Apple to charge you 30% to be in the store. Hey is an email program that Apple has refused because they don't have an in-app subscription. It's $100 a year email service, but they didn't put it, and they are refusing to put it in the app. The reason it's important is it comes from Basecamp, Jason Fried and David Hannemeyer Hansen, who are very well known, highly respected. And I think there's a certain amount of excitement. I signed up immediately after reading about Hey.com because it's an interesting take on email. But Phil Schiller says, nope, we're not going to change the rules. And until Hey offers in-app purchases of their service, it ain't going to happen. Is Apple right or wrong on this? Now, Andy, you and I got to tussle, and Renee got to tussle a little bit with Alex. Or actually, Renee wasn't there. Lori Gill got a little tussle with Alex, but Alex was really adamant. What do you think, Georgia? Should Apple relent and let Hey be in the App Store without in-app purchases?
I think they should. I think they should actually overhaul the entire system. I think that 30%, like there's so many developers that aren't making anything and you already have to pay for the developer kit. Like, I think that it should be like a percentage of how much you make, right? So if you're a new struggling developer, it should be a very small amount of percentages they make. I think that if you're a bigger developer, you could make a larger percentage and it's not going to hurt Apple. And I think they should be a little bit more open about not trying to squeeze every single person for as much as they can get, because it's not like Apple's struggling. So I think that a lot of the people are recognizing these large trillion-dollar, billion-dollar companies are kind of swallowing up all the things that are good in the world, and there's a lot of backlash because of that, and I think it would cost Apple very little for a lot of goodwill.
30%. It seems like a lot, especially now you can buy the service online, and that's what Basecamp wants you to do, is pay for it online and then download an app. Their contention is it's kind of like the Kindle app. It's just an email reader. It lets you read your email, but the service is separate. Apple says, no, that's not a reader app. And so you have to do it differently. Owen, you have an opinion on this? I think you do.
I do. I'm anti-Apple in most ways other than my phone and my watch and my iPad and my many of the
Me too. I'm with you there. I hate Apple except for my iMac Pro and my MacBook Pro and my MacBook Air and I hate him and the Apple Watch. I hate him.
The thing that drives me crazy is, do you want to play in the NBA or do you want to play in the Circus League? Do you want to play in the NFL or do you want to play in the XFL? Because when somebody has a major league and they make the rules, either you play by the rules or you don't.
Right.
Here's the thing. Apple is Apple, which gives everyone the benefit of having the possibility of having that one-hit wonder app and make $1 bajillion. Yes, a lot of people are struggling, but they've also made a mint for a lot of companies that would have never have made a dime anywhere else. They got Android that's free. Why aren't you out there making a mint on Android? Because you can't. So the payment structure that Apple has facilitated, the brand facilitation that they have, the quality control that they have. If you don't want to pay, then you don't want to play. I really don't have a problem with it. Now, if you want to say 30% is too high, so sure, let's cut it down to 20%. And then 10 years will be crying about 20%. Then you'll be down to 10%. And then Apple won't have any money. And then I won't have to pay $1,000-something for this phone. So Apple makes the rules because it's their company, and that's the way it goes. Either you pay to play or you don't. I don't care about companies crying about it. I don't care about people trying to get around it. Go ahead and make your application so great that it makes me switch from my iPhone to a Samsung, and then I'll come and get your email. Hey, how you doing about that? I don't know. That's just my thought.
Yeah, and Apple, the other complaint people make is not necessarily that they want the 30%, but that they're just not consistent in the application of these rules. That some email programs that don't do this are on the App Store. Apple's, in its letter to Basecamp, said, look, your app doesn't do anything. It doesn't read email unless you pay $100 on hey.com to get it. And we don't want an app on our phone that doesn't do anything unless you pay outside to turn it on. And if you're going to do that, you have to have it in the app. And that's a reasonable thing from their position is, look, end users are going to download this app and say, well, now what? And there's no way they can do anything in the app. So I don't disagree that that's a problem. And I also think that Basecamp is very happy to have this controversy going on because a hell of a lot more people know about Hey.com than did before.
You know what they'll do? They'll bump it up to 115 and then put it in the App Store, and then the margin
just charge us.
But they're just going to get free advertisement because we're here talking about it.
That, by the way, is the basis for a class action lawsuit the Supreme Court allowed to go forward last year against the App Store, saying you're in effect charging end users this because the companies just passed the 30% along in their price. And so that's a case that is ongoing. So we'll keep an eye on that.
For me, it's a question of Apple is running the risk of turning into Ticketmaster, where if for the most part, the idea that they're establishing this app store and all these APIs and Xcode to allow you to create a word, let's say a word processor or a game, and then sell it to the store. They will handle all the distribution. They will handle all the taking of the money and that sort of thing. And that's when you start to say, okay, well, here's all the things they're doing for this thing, which is a piece of software. But then when you get into situations like, why are they insisting that why can't I simply buy books through the Kindle app? Why can't I buy comic books through the Comixology app? And you start to ask yourself, well, what the hell are they doing that would entitle them to 30% of my Superman comic? That's the sort of thing that they want to avoid, because I do see the need for developers to pay something into this. This Apple can't simply run this as a charity. This is something that they are delivering value, providing a service, and they deserve to be paid for that service. But there are certainly exceptions to this, where again you say, why is this $75 ticket costing me $156? What is Ticketmaster doing to justify a $75 like add-on to this purchase price? When the answer is no, I'm not upset with the venue promoter. I'm not upset with the band. I'm upset with Ticketmaster. And the second problem is always something that's been very consistent, which is the inconsistency with which Apple seems to promote its rules for the App Store. Apple said that, well, the only reason why your iOS app got accepted to begin with was because of a mistake. We shouldn't have let it in to begin with. And there's so many times I've talked to developers where they've had problems exactly like this, where an app on a totally non-controversial sort of issue that they've been submitting and updating this app for 3 or 4 years, and now suddenly they produce an update and it gets rejected because they're saying that, oh, well, 3 years ago you should have switched from using this API for time or for text or for whatever to this new API, and for that reason we're rejecting it. And then they'll say, well, we talked to you 3 years ago and told you that there's no way we can make our app work with this change that you're suggesting, and their response is, well, nonetheless. So it's a problem for people who think that Apple is cheating them out of a lot of money, but it's also indicative of how powerless a lot of developers feel when they're trying to deal with this black box whose judgments are not to be tampered with or questioned.
I think that's the real complaint.
Which is the problem,
of a lot
right?
Of
is that power differentials that if your app gets thrown out, there's nothing that you can do. If Apple says no for whatever reason they choose to, you can't really do anything, right? If you're a really large company, you probably have big lawyers, and odds are you can kind of put some pressure on it. Or if you're really famous, right? If you're Taylor Swift, you can put pressure on Apple and something could actually happen. But for most developers, they have nothing. There's no recourse. They don't have the money from it because they're not making any money. And they're already having to pay Apple, to be a developer. But, and I'll just say it might be controversial, but if like all developers kind of created a union where they were unionized and they had a union that could fight for them versus Apple, then they would have at least a recourse if something that they think is unfair or possibly is unfair happens to them.
And can I just say something on a regular world point? So if I have a business and I go into a strip mall and I rent a storefront and my business is booming and I'm paying rent, and my landlord says, oh, your lease is up, I'm going to raise the rent XYZ because you're making this much money and I want it. Well, do I close up my store and move away or sell it out on the street, across the street? Like, I have to pay this rent. And somebody could.
You could actually move.
You could. Well, and you
right?
You could. You could move to Android. There's another platform out there that's for you that's free. I'm just saying this is the antithesis of how things work in the world. You're paying rent somewhere because you want to sell your stuff at this storefront, and at some point things change in the lease, and they say, look, you have to do this or do that, or you have to move out. We're going to cut your square footage. There's all kinds of things that happen in the regular world. This is average business stuff, and we have a personal affinity to it because we want our apps, or we feel like these companies are being trampled upon. But this is just business. And I hate sticking up for Apple like this. It's driving me crazy.
Isn't there a risk,
though? But it's business in a monopoly, right?
Exactly.
Like they have a monopoly.
Well,
over the
and this
App
was
Store,
Alex's.
So it's different. There's 2 malls, right?
This was
like
Alex's point. Is it isn't a monopoly. That in no country does Apple have more than, say, 50% market share. I don't know. What is the market share in the U.S.? Maybe in the U.S. they have 80%. But it's not monopoly size. And you do have a choice in that respect. There's also a risk to Apple. And Daniel Jalkut, who is a great developer, Red Sweater Software, posted this on his microblog. Something I haven't emphasized is Apple's approach to Hey.com and others who are actively dissuaded from distributing apps to customers. Basically, Apple saying, yeah, no, you can't distribute this, is it creates a threat to Apple's platforms. There's a point at which both developers and consumers will turn away. Is that a risk that Apple has to be a little more generous because they could lose developers, they could lose users on this?
Somebody just suggested a union, and that's super scary. Go ahead and put that on blast on a loop clip and put it on.
Yep.
Facebook would block it. Don't worry.
Twice.
1,000 views on it because that's scary.
No one likes that word.
Want to scare Apple?
Company.
Man, look, I'm about to start the Apple App Union right now. I want.
Wouldn't that be interesting? A developers union?
2%.
I think it should happen, right? Every single corporation hates 2 words: union and regulation.
That's right.
So
that's
one
interesting.
Of the 2.
So that would be a threat to Apple if developers. But see, I don't see that happening. Developers make too much money. You know, very famously, Tim Sweeney.
It would be an app. The union itself would be an app that then that app would make money from other app developers, would then bring back money. I don't know. I see someone being able to do it.
That's pay dues. That's why I said I'm trying to run this union.
Getting that in the App Store.
I'm about to be Tim Cook. We gotta
make some money.
Woo!
Tim Sweeney, who's the founder of Epic Games and has made billions of dollars. I think he made $7 billion in year 1 of Fortnite. Puts Fortnite on the App Store, mainly because there's no choice. And he gives App that 30% of his billions of dollars because he has to. But notice he's not putting it there. He tried for a while not to put it on the Android Play Store, but just offer it as a side load, which Android allows you to do. But that became such a problem. He's even given in and he's put it in the Android Play Store. You need those platforms if you want to succeed on either Android or iOS these days. You have to be in the store. On the one hand, in Apple, because you have to. There's no other way. But even on Android, where you have a choice, there's no way to make money. So it's interesting. There's a good test. If Sweeney's not willing to walk away from what must be billions of dollars that Apple's taking out of his pocket with their 30%, then I can't imagine many others doing it. It's just
because he's still making money.
Right.
That's the and
it's not a hurt to him.
Of business. Is the cost of doing business.
It's the cost of doing business. Yeah.
You pay, Uncle Leo, don't you have to pay lights and employees?
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't go to the power company and say we're going to have all the businesses in Petaluma have decided not to pay power bills anymore.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
So a lot of workers do unionize, right?
That's
different.
The
police have a union, nurses have a union, and that's how they deal with government funding and what they deal with that, right?
Yep. No, and it works.
So Apple, it would work.
I'm in the union. I'm in the Screen Actors Guild, the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists.
I'm in the Screen Actors Guild too, my friend.
We're SAG-AFTRA brothers.
We are.
Give it to me, brother. Yeah. Actually, what are you drinking? Hard lemonade? What is that?
I am drinking Spanger. Is it Italian, maybe? Spanger della Granja.
San Pellegrino. Oh, limonata. That's really good. That's the best. That's good stuff.
I didn't want to butcher it like you did.
San Pellegrino. That's good stuff. Now I want some San Pellegrino.
That's right. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.